Okay, here's another showing of the Greek hand in the Bible, if you will. It's shown in allegory, and of course, allegory would mean that it's not actually true, it's just trying to tell somebody something with a story. But strangely, you can make a parallel here between the tales of the Iliad and the Odyssey again, and something that's told in the Bible as a fact. But in the Bible way, it's actually shown as a parable type thing, trying to give you an idea. See if I can explain this correctly to you. If you've studied anything about the Bible, or perhaps even very little, you might have heard the story where they talk about how a man's going to go on a long journey, and when he does, he puts his servants in charge over the slaves and the people that do all the work there and everything that happens. Right? And he leaves, and they end up thinking that he's not going to come back because he's gone quite some time. And during that time, they didn't take care of the place and his vineyards, and everything went to crap, and drunkenness and all kinds of things ensued. And when he came back, he was pissed off. And what did he do but actually hack the guy up to death, to pieces, kind of like Osiris, if you will, for having not taken care of his vineyard. Now, there's a whole lot of parables written in this type situation here. And of course, in the Bible, it's looked at as being an idea of you've got to take care of your flock until I return for the second coming, and this type of concept. And it's meant to be an allegory to threaten people, but also to, coming back as a lion in that whole situation there. But where does that concept come from? Well, I'll tell you here in just a minute. You see, the second coming's already happened, and I've shown you in other videos, so I won't go into the depths of that simple concept here. If there even was a first coming in the first place. For it looks like a bunch of religious zealots in Judea were conflagrated all into an idea of Jesus and his concepts and everything that happened after the fact and so on. A lot of people are aware of this. But where does this idea show in the Iliad and the Odyssey? Well, that's the simple concept that's in the Iliad and the Odyssey, and like in most of the biblical tales, it's expounded upon quite a bit more in the original tales. Like when you find the Sumerian tales of creation and the flood and so on, they go into much more detail about a lot of other things, even the exact stuff about it. Well, they talk about measurements of the boat and stuff like that too in there. But it's funny how it always becomes parallelism or mimicry, if you will. For the actual tale of Odysseus is this guy that's going to take a long journey, and he puts his head guy in charge there. And he's gone. And in fact, he's gone far too long from the Trojan War. And it takes him over 10 years to get back or whatever, right? And when he shows back up, people don't recognize him. He's incognito and of course looks quite different than he did before. Perhaps somebody old and gristled, weathered from being on the ocean for a long time and having a beard and all this type of look, won't quite look the same as her husband that left originally. But in this magic of disguise, he shows back up and finds out what's happened, and he ends up hacking his servant to death and hacks him into pieces, exactly like this. Slightly different words, same concept, be just like somebody else tells the same story. And then he proceeds to kill everybody that's there attached with it, and that has a connection allegorical too to all of Odysseus's men dying and so on. But that's the same concept. And it's just another showing of the Greek hand in the Bible and how there's an allegory shown there. Whether you want to believe the Greeks wrote this into there and the ancient Gnostics that were writing everything put these stories in there because it was familiar to them, or you want to believe that it was actually Jewish people that took and put this into there, or later allegorical writers. But a parable is just like an allegory and just like an Aesop's fable, and we found a lot of them in the Bible. It's an amazing thing that they were able to envelope all of these concepts that I'm showing you. That's kind of the special for this 8,000 subs video series that I'm going to put through here, that actually shows that in this book they took so many other people's pagan mythologies and twisted it all into it. And it's also written in the stars, as I've shown you here recently too. All of these things, Jesus walks on water, the whole concept. You know, that walking on water thing, it happened to Hermes, Mercury. He did the same thing. Alexander did the same thing whenever he crosses across the Aegean. People walked on water. It's something that can be found in Greek tales, just like the Dionysian mysteries and water to wine and all of these other type things that are blended off into it. Some of them seem real easy. Other ones like this are not look familiar, but I beckon you to watch the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's a pretty interesting movie. I know it's done back in the 60s. If you have any nostalgicness to it or whatever, you can see Kirk Douglas, who passed away not too recently, going in all of the different phases that they have of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Anybody that they said they did a pretty good job, but it would require 3 or 4 movies, and to do it in some kind of grandiose way like Lord of the Rings or something, to actually get the idea in a better way. And I hope somehow they redo that movie, but they don't try to introduce a black lesbian woman as Odysseus or anything like that. Leave it what it truly was. Don't try to add in people that aren't supposed to be there, and everything that goes along with that concept, and just put it forward as mythology, but turn around and also perhaps in that movie show the fact that these things are written in the stars at certain moments, like they do in Clash of the Titans with Perseus and his story, but show you that here's this thing, and then fade out from that, from what's going on, and show you, hey, here's an allegory, here's this written in the stars thing, here's this other. They probably won't turn around and show you that it has a direct allegory with things that happen in the Bible, and that can be understandable the way society still is as this starts to go off, and this age that we're finally coming to, an age of enlightenment. You know, it seems like we keep going through these phases where we get more and more enlightened in little phases as we go through all of this stuff. It's kind of disgusting. People are raised in an idea that they're so brainwashed over something like this. They've been actually lied to, like the second Santa Claus still exists. Kind of drives me. I'm lucky that I wasn't really in that devout situation like my brother is, and still, in the face of science, he can't let it go in any way. In fact, it's all word for word totally true. Well, it is, because it's allegory written from other things. Or even the story that it comes from Odysseus actually true? Is there something? Well, it looks like there are parts of things like that happened before in certain situations with somebody that's important. And they put it all together as a story here, so in some way it happened, but not in the way that it's presented to you. There are other times there are talking donkeys and talking snakes and things like that, and people can't realize this is a fairy tale. It's like they're caught up in a mist. They don't want to walk out either. Let me know what you think down below, but that's just one more showing here of allegories or places in the Bible where there's just a story. Seems to come out of nowhere, just plugged in. but it has something to do with this, something to do with that, and the reason it's there is because it's lion come back as a lamb, the second return, all these things are going to happen, and so they put it in there. Well, Odysseus came back as a lion, not a lamb, in the story. You perhaps have seen it. I tried to make a video before of it showing this footage, but that got flagged real quick, so I had to make it with just using a straight picture like this, which is pretty good, where it shows me and him and some of the parts of the story there. But you know it, where he comes back in and nobody can string his bow, and because he knows the technique, he's able to do it. And he strings his bow and then he shoots it through all these anvils. But then again, that's also shown in some idea in the Hindu and India beliefs, and there's something about that concept that goes on there. So that shows you both of those are probably taken from something that came much earlier. And some of these folklore tales actually come from before writing was written down, as I've shown a lot of times. And how old does it go back? It looks like it goes back well into the last ice age with some of these stories. Eventually get expounded upon, and we'll probably never know the true reality of the story that it came from, but something like that happened once. Peace.